Yay, we're live. Hi, everyone.
Hey, hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of the Trump Tyranny Tracker, where we'll be covering a lot of what's going on in Iran as well, or in the region around Iran, because there's so much developing today at this hour. Olga, this has been a almost predictable escalation that we're seeing this afternoon as Iran has launched, it looks like at least one missile, maybe missiles, at U.S. bases in Qatar. We sort of knew this was coming. This was a bit of a trap that Donald Trump stepped into, and here we are witnessing the repercussions of that.
Yeah, so it's funny because you remember Friday we finished off and I said
You did.
expect attacks this weekend.
Yeah.
What's happening now actually doesn't concern me as much because even though Iran sent missiles into Qatar and to Iraq, they did inform them and coordinate with the Qatari government, and they informed the U.S. side that these missiles were coming. So publicly, they're looking to de-escalate. Now, with that said, I worry more about their, asymmetrical warfare. They have cells inside the U.S. They have cells across Europe that they have established for a very long time. They have been tapped into our, infrastructure facilities so they can carry out cyber attacks. So I would worry more about that than this, because this is not the response. This was just a public response for them domestically to show, look, we are striking back. But I would worry about the actual real response that will be coming, and it could come, tomorrow, it could come next month. And that's it. And basically, I mean, what Trump did is he dragged us into war, because if he thinks that it was a one and done, going into a country and bombing their nuclear facilities, if he thinks this was the end of it, I mean, he's very, very wrong. And we've seen this story, play out.
Just to catch people up as they're joining us, this is Operation Annunciation of Victory that the Iranians launched, and it attacked the installations in Qatar and Iraq. It targeted the Udeid Air Base. That's where 10,000 U.S. troops are based, and the Ain al-Assad Air Base. This comes 3 days after Trump bombed the Iranian nuclear facilities, abandoning his G7 colleagues. Certainly there was no coordination with any allies except Israel, it seems, in attacking those facilities. I did some reporting and analysis earlier on. It doesn't even look like they're as successful in really targeting the capability of Iran's nuclear facilities, that the Iranians probably had removed all the uranium.
Absolutely.
And by the time this happened, so, strategically, this has been a bit of a failure. Tactically, yeah, they struck the targets. Well done. But, has it destroyed the capability? Not at all. It's basically just put them back about a year or two.
If you tell a child, a 5-year-old, for 1 week that you're going to take their candy away, guess what? They're going to hide their candy. I mean, this Trump was broadcasting, this potential attack for weeks. You have the Israelis, who are striking Iran on a daily basis. Of course, they hid it. They hid it from the first night that, Israel launched their attacks. I guarantee you. And we don't know what's inside of Iran. We don't know how deep. I mean, if it's anything like Hamas operates with their 5 million tunnels, that intersect everywhere, we don't know what kind of tunnels they have and how they're moving this stuff. And they didn't target the nuclear plant Bushehr, where the Russians are. They didn't target Isfahan, where they didn't bomb that plant where they could have moved. And frankly, I mean, anyone, any country, if you are being bombed on a daily basis, of course, you're going to take it, spread it across the country, and move it around. So, yes, and they can reconstitute extremely quick, because as long as the centrifuges and, the enriched uranium are intact, I mean, all they need is, a few months, maybe a year, to reconstitute and make nuclear weapons.
It is interesting. Sorry,
Hmm.
keep going. No, I was
Go
just saying,
ahead.
really interesting what you said about the Russian nuclear facility that's staffed with Russian scientists that was not hit. And the other
No.
big benefit to Vladimir Putin is, of course, all this tension in the Middle East is increasing the price of oil because limiting supply. The Straits of Hormuz is, not likely to be fully functional, maybe even closed for a while. What that means is that, Putin is getting a benefit from this. He ultimately is going to get an increased oil price that helps him. It helps him because he becomes a supplier of the oil's production, and at $79, it's a lot better than at $69, or whatever the benchmark was that they couldn't finance this war. Now he's got a little bit of extra cash coming in that can finance this war. My estimate's about $50 billion.
I don't think so. I think the Russians, I can tell you, I've been monitoring Russian news. They're extremely angry. Like they rather not have the high oil prices, and a key ally of theirs who've been supplying weapons for them, under attack and them losing another foothold in the Middle East. Also, I mean, we do have the oil cap because they're capped right now at $60. So oil can, whatever it goes, there's still a cap. And if, they do block first of all, I don't think Iran would block it. Maybe we'll see.
Parliament
Because
has
it would,
approved it. The Iranian parliament has approved it. Now, the Iranians haven't done it yet, but even just the people avoiding right now, at this very moment, the tankers moving into the straits,
yeah.
they just, who wants to be in that region right now? It's just too volatile.
But the thing you have to remember is that China is also another key ally of Iran, and China buys the majority of oil from Iran. So, I mean, I don't know how much they'll do it. They'll probably do something. I'm not as sure, but I can tell you on the Russian side, they rather this have not happened. They're extremely angry about this. You see, as after October 7th, how within 48 hours Hamas was leaders were in Russia meeting with Putin. You had yesterday the Iranian foreign minister and the whole delegation landing in Moscow for consultations with Russia today. So they frankly, honestly, would rather not have this done. Yes, it would drag the U.S. into another war and keep them occupied in the Middle East. But at the same time, it also disrupts a critical ally of Russia. And I can tell you just from the commentary and the opinions, they're pretty furious about this.
Yeah, I'm sure they are putting out that sentiment because it's their ally that's being attacked. But it's interesting that Putin, just before the attacks took place, said about Israel that he was letting Israel do what they needed to do and wasn't responding to Israel because there are so many Russians now living in Israel that he basically views it as a Russian speaking country almost. That was his exact quote. So he's
Well, that
allowing.
I would take as a threat because
Yeah,
anytime Russia says we have to protect our Russian speakers, that
right.
usually leads to an invasion or
But
threat
he's
of
using
an
it in the reverse.
invasion.
He's using it in the reverse way now by
Yeah.
saying that Israel needs to be protected because of that. He sort of gave them permission to keep doing it, and that deal with the Israelis around the Russian scientists as well. Seems to they've obviously had a conversation before this took place with the
Yeah.
Russians, and this is a bit performative what we're seeing. But the only person who's not perhaps clued into what's going on is Donald Trump, who seems to be out on a limb doing foreign policy by the seat of his pants, not consulting Congress, not consulting allies, just being completely, wild, really, and responding to what basically the vain, appreciation by Bibi Netanyahu, just appealing to his ego.
Yeah, no, look, Netanyahu has wanted to bomb Iran, I mean, for as long as Bolton has.
Mm.
For decades. And, they found their sucker in the White House. And I told you, for the past week and a half, that you had like two intelligence agencies like trying to manipulate Trump. You had Russia Security Intelligence Services, trying to pull him away from carrying out any attacks. And they really activated everyone. I mean, you see every one of their Western shills and assets, attacking Trump for the past week. Then you had, on the other hand, Mossad, who's trying to, rein Trump in to attack. Apparently, Israel won this round. And that's it. And you see, I mean, now, interestingly enough, after this happened, Medvedev came out, who's the former president and prime minister, came out with a statement that, you know what, now every country, who stands by Iran can supply them with nuclear warheads. I mean, he basically admitted to, you know, what the Russians have quietly been doing, which is supplying Iran with nuclear materials and helping with the enrichment, helping with their nuclear program for quite a long time. So they basically, admitted it publicly along with North Korea. So now, and then interestingly enough, today I didn't look in, I just saw a headline that apparently Trump now is attacking Medvedev.
Oh,
And
really?
I was like, oh, I was like, oh, what a shit show.
It
Like,
is really a shit show. I mean, this is really a pathetic foreign policy by every account. It just doesn't seem to achieve its objectives, and it's just endangering American troops and bases around the Middle East, if not around the world. And as you point out, who knows what the domestic threat really will be, or any sort of asymmetrical threat. Let's get into the Trump tyranny tracker for today, because it is day 154. And there's a lot of news that you've been covering in the tracker today. A day after Trump declared Iran's nuclear program obliterated, top U.S. officials now admit they don't know where Iran's weapons-grade uranium went. J.D. Vance and IAEA head Rafael Grossi confirmed Iran likely moved up to 880 pounds or 60% of enriched uranium, enough for several weapons before the U.S. strikes. We've discussed this already in some form, but this is a real issue.
this reminds me of after Iraq, when Bush put up mission accomplished.
Yes, I
I
heard about
mean,
that.
when you carry out these type of operations, I mean, the last thing that anyone should do when you have the whole Republican Party cheering it on is to, uh, say mission accomplished and
Yeah,
that everything is obliterated,
when it's
because this is where we end up. And the reason I put this into the tracker, besides the obvious, that Trump took credit for something that we still don't know. We don't know where this enriched uranium is. We don't know where the centrifuges are. We don't know how much damage was done. But the reason I put it up is because Trump now is, seems to be so angry because he doubled down yesterday after not only Netanyahu himself came out and said, we've lost track of it, but we have interesting intel, to maybe allocate it. The reason I put it is because look for Trump to now force his intelligence services to basically put a fake intelligence to say that, mission was accomplished.
yeah.
And this puts America into a very dangerous place, because this, frankly, is how Russia operates, where any mission ordered by the Kremlin is backed by, fake intelligence that, yes, everything is operating well, as we saw with Russia's genocidal war in Ukraine.
Yeah, it does seem that that's going to be very hard to pull off with the already big evidence, as you point out, that the uranium has been removed and that, there was so much advance warning. There are satellite images of trucks and unusual activity just before, obviously, the attack. I mean, obviously, they're doing, moving they're moving it ahead
Go
of the
tell
attack.
that to Mega. Go
Yeah.
tell that to Fox News, because all of them are on a very disciplined right now pattern that everything
Hmm.
was successful, everything was accomplished, this was perfect, and that's it. And I mean, they are very, like, really, like, his loyalist with the Republican, with Fox News, are on a very tight ship right now, putting out this narrative, that this is what it is. So,
Well, how can it
you
be a success if they're bombing Air Force bases and other bases in the Middle East that have?
exactly. Well,
It's hardly a success. The other factor is, of course, the Democrats say they were completely blindsided by Trump's strike on Iran's nuclear program. They received no briefing before any of this went down, which is unbelievable. The Republicans were reportedly notified in advance, while Democrats learned about the attack from Trump's social media posts. This represents a fundamental breakdown. Obviously, this is not the way America does war. You're meant to get congressional approval for any kind of military action.
yeah, and look, I mean, there have been a lot of operations carried out without congressional approval, but Congress was notified. Maybe there wasn't a full vote on it. But here are two things that I take issue with. One, who in the hell announces a war on a country on Truth Social.
Mm.
I mean, this is just the most absurd way of announcing that we are now in a war with Iran. So that's one. And two, the fact that he selectively told, just a handful of Republicans. He apparently told Sean Hannity and a few people in Fox News. And I mean, this again becomes extremely dangerous when you have a sitting president, sharing information that affects every single American, sharing it with a select few of people, and that's it. And I mean, the fact that Dems, who, are on the Intel Committee, Foreign Affairs Committee, that they were completely sidelined and had to find out from Truth Social that then, the screenshot got passed around on Twitter and all the other social medias. This is not how you run a war. This is extremely dangerous, especially the repercussions for us, because I mean, right now, our useless Department of Homeland Security 24 hours later issued a worldwide, caution for all Americans. I mean, this should have been prepared immediately. Um, as soon as the bombs fell, like there should have been a memo going out for every American to be careful to avoid, crowds, and that they have a target on their head right now,
I can tell you why.
here
Yeah.
and domestically and abroad.
I can tell you why Trump might be doing that on Truth Social, by the way. Trump Media and Technology Group authorized a $400 million stock buyback program beginning today, with the board of directors approving the repurchase of shares. They've got $3 billion in cash sitting at Trump Media, which is where Truth Social houses. So, if he's putting out these kind of world announcements on there, it's to increase traffic, it's to increase, the stock price probably for Truth Social, another obvious, ridiculous point of corruption by this president. Turning to the alliance and the relationships, NATO has essentially cancelled meaningful Ukraine discussions at the Hague summit, with Zelenskyy relegated to dinner attendance only and no Ukraine Council meeting, despite Russia's escalating genocidal war. This is a really big deal that Zelenskyy is being sidelined by NATO under American orders, really.
Yeah. So NATO had to basically, for this upcoming summit, strip and, but like for the most part, all of their support from Ukraine, at least in the language, in order to appease Trump. And at the same time, there's always the council meeting, and this was canceled. I mean, what a slap in the face. You have, Ukraine, who, by the way, didn't invade anyone. Ukraine was sitting minding
Yeah.
their business when they got invaded over a decade ago. And then a full-scale invasion was launched, in 22. And you have them now. Russia, over the past few weeks, has really escalated their attacks. While everyone was watching yesterday what's happening between Israel and Iran, Russia launched so many drones, hundreds of drones and ballistic missiles into Ukraine. And you had, apartment buildings hit, people killed, people buried under the rubble that they're still looking for. And this is where U.S. is. I mean, Trump continues, to provide cover for Putin to continue murdering his, Ukrainians. And Putin very clearly stated, he had just a St. Petersburg Economic Forum on the weekend, and he clearly stated that the goal is all of Ukraine. And he clearly said, any place a Russian soldier, now Israel should really think about this, any place a Russian soldier steps foot, this is ours, our land. So, I
Well,
mean, this is where we are, and this is, NATO that's supposed to every year have focused on helping Ukraine, finish this.
this
This
is
is
really
where we are.
This is really worrying. I think in this geopolitical rearrangement that we're seeing, this whole attack on Iran really takes the focus away from Ukraine. It gives Putin another opportunity to escalate, and with Ukraine being relegated to basically a dinner attendance at NATO's summit, it tells you exactly where the allegiance of Donald Trump is and where their emphasis is. It's certainly not on the Ukrainian side; it's on Russia's side. And that changes the dynamics around the world a lot, especially if we're now going to be focusing all our efforts on these Middle East escalations instead of, helping Ukraine. That's a real tragedy. That is the Trump tyranny tracker for today. We'll also be
Oh,
back.
one more.
Oh, okay, go for it. Yeah.
This video went viral, and we need to, put this to light because this is just so brutal
Mm.
and gross. So a man was tackled by ICE, beaten, literally on video, beaten. He was a undocumented day laborer, gardener. And I mean, if you see the video, it's gross, and like, we all need to like push back. He's the father of 3 Marines.
Mm.
How can how can these Marines who saw this video and saw their father being beaten by U.S. thugs, like, how do you even reconcile all of this? And, I expect everyone to see the video. We need to stop this, what's happening with ICE. We need to push back because these tactics are identical to Russia. I mean, there is no difference what is happening here with frickin' masked thugs running around, grabbing people, beating people, breaking windows, throwing people into unmarked vans. And what happens in Russia with masked thugs, going and disappearing people, beating people, and throwing them into unmarked cars.
It's
So, I mean,
unbelievable.
I just wanted to put a highlight to this story because, I mean, yesterday was this, last week it was a pregnant, imagine 9 month pregnant woman with Kristi Noem attending this raid. And she was an American citizen who had frickin' shackles thrown around her 9 month belly. And
Mhm.
she ended up giving birth, from this trauma. I mean, what are we doing? We're going to frickin' shackle pregnant women, beat, people who are just here trying to provide a living for, their family. And I mean, look at the job he did. He raised 3 men who became, Marines
Marines,
for
yeah.
our military.
It's so appalling, and we don't know who these masked, people are. We don't really know how they got into ICE, whether they actually work for ICE, are they day contractors? They could be insurrectionists. They could be anybody, really.
They could be
These are,
Proud Boys.
yeah. Well, the Proud Boys. I mean, you saw Tario is part of this ICE raids thing, which is not part of the government, but it's related to these ICE raids. It gives people rewards, crypto rewards, if they
Yeah.
identify people that should be arrested by ICE. I mean, this is completely gone crazy, and we need to be able to have communities be able to defend their citizens. I mean, it's getting to the point where you really need them to
And
defend
I
the
can
people.
tell you, I'm making this warning. If I ever see masked thugs coming at me,
Mm.
I will pepper spray them and frickin' beat them and do whatever I can because this is not America. Like, if people want to come and, arrest you or question you or detain you, they have to identify who they are. They have to have a name associated, a badge number, and they're supposed to present a warrant, not this. And I mean, this video, I wanted to bring light to it because everyone needs to see this video. Someone mentioned they sent it to their, Congress people. Send it to everyone because we cannot, let Iran and other stories, erase these human rights abuses happening in this country. And that video was so gross. I mean, it was so gross. It was repulsive.
Even if there were people who thought that maybe Trump's policy around, let's fix the immigration issue was okay, was maybe even appropriate for voting for, what they're doing in executing this is completely ridiculous. It's completely beyond the Constitution. It's beyond any rule of law. It's beyond any due process. This has now jumped the gun a million times, and it's now, crimes against humanity. It's real war criminal stuff. So, this is not acceptable, and you're right to point that out. If you share the video with me, I'll also put it up on Narrative.
Yeah,
And
please, because the
yeah,
more people to see this, and I mean, there are so many of these videos, but this
yes.
video, I mean, his children signed up to die for this country. This is not how the man should frickin', be humiliated, degraded, and beaten on a city street. I mean, this is
Unbelievable.
not, what you do because the guy is undocumented allegedly, and and gardens, mows lawns for a living. I mean, this is disgusting.
When you think about it, the amount of American Marines now at risk in the Middle East, you've got this Marine's father that's been beat up. I mean, this is not a president that cares about the military at all and
No.
seems to be interested in putting them in harm's way. Well, that is the Trump Tyranny Tracker for today. Tomorrow night, we'll be continuing our Authoritarianism 101 series, seminar series. So anyone who wants to join, please sign up today, or at least by 7 p.m. tomorrow. And you can
Yeah.
find the details on either the Trump Tyranny Tracker or Unmasking Russia or on narrative.org, Narativ.org. Thank you very much for being here today. We'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back in half an hour from now with
33
another
minutes.
another breaking news edition of Five Stack. We'll look at Iran for the entire show. So please join us then. And thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Olga.
I thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.